Welcome back to the Smugglers Den. This is episode 43. I'm your host, Tiny Grimes. As always, we're brought to you by swdestiny.com. They're hosting the show. Go there for all your Destiny needs. You can check me out on Patreon, Tiny Grimes, and support the show that way. Thanks everyone who has been so generous with your support. You can also now sponsor the show through YouTube Gaming and find me there if you're interested. Just going directly through YouTube, that is another avenue you can explore. And without further ado, I'd like to bring my co-host this week, Mike Gemme, or Bobby Sapphire, as his nighttime nickname is. What's up, Mike? How you doing?
That is my nighttime nickname. I'm a creature of the night, or I used to be when I was a young man.
For some reason, I feel like that's your gigolo name. Like that's your side job. I don't know if your wife knows or not, but that feels like your side job.
I wish that the name came from a place of such glamour. It did not.
That's unfortunate. It
No.
really, really sounds like it.
Some bullies tried to make fun of me because, my name is Mike Gemme, so they were like, "Who's this guy, Bobby Sapphire?" And then I took it. I adopted it. I made it mine.
Yeah. Nice.
Took away their power. Yeah.
Took away the bully's power. I like it.
That's right.
I like it. And then did you channel that to become a bully, or how did that work?
No, it was college. It was like I was 22. I was 22. These guys were just being jags, and I loved it. I was like, "Oh yeah, it's gonna be my pen name."
I'm just joking. Like I was trying to say you're a bully.
Oh,
now.
you're trying to set me up.
Do you see where that's going?
Yeah,
All right.
I'm more of a madman than a bully.
Oh,
I just slash
fair.
out at everyone.
I was gonna say I thought you cursed out the people who watch the Hyperloops for some reason. Like I took time to watch the Hyperloops, and now Mike is telling me I can do terrible things to myself. Maybe I won't watch next time.
Well, teach their own, Tiny.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. All right, Mike. So how much Destiny have you been playing lately?
So much Destiny. Maybe the most Destiny I've ever played.
Even more than prepping for Gen Con?
That was really structured. And also, I felt like all four of us were really tuned in. And I didn't feel like I needed to do as much work. Now with Empire War and a new set, the third set, there's over 400 cards to go in our decks.
Wow.
There's just so much work to do. So I feel like there's always a deck to try and always a deck to test against. And I don't know, I've just, for whatever reason, have really enjoyed just sort of, tackling the meta, trying to figure out what's good and what's not.
Yeah, I'm really jealous. This is the worst time ever to get a new overwhelming job. I was able to play every single Wednesday night, and it was amazing. And now, if I ever get out on Wednesday night, it's a miracle. So now I'm trying to scramble for other ways, tabletop simulator. So I have not been able to play every deck like I normally would. Instead, it's kind of like, well, this deck seems cool. I'm gonna play this for a bit. Get a couple games here and a couple games there, rather than a new set dropped. So 200 games in the first 3 weeks. Let's do this.
Yeah, that's how I felt. But again, I never play in real life. I only play on TTS, so it's very much from the convenience of my home after my daughter and my wife are in bed because they go to bed early. And, I stay up for a couple hours and I'm putting in work, writing or making videos or just testing so that I can be informed. Because there's just so much going on in the first few weeks. It's tough to stay up with everything everyone's doing.
Yeah, totally agree with that. It's I am not up on what everyone has tried. It's more of, somebody made an Inquisitor deck that looked less than terrible, and I was like, I kind of want to try that. And then it was like, well, I don't have a lot of time, and it's the Inquisitor, so we all know it's still terrible, even though it doesn't look terrible.
Yeah.
All right, Mike. Well, what I want to start is with this thing that I noticed. I was looking through my video channel, and I was like, oh my goodness. Just over a year ago, now it's like a year and 2 days, I made a video, my preliminary review of Star Wars Destiny. So I decided to listen to it, thinking it would be something after I played quite a bit. But it wasn't. This was, I played 4 games with the starter deck and had just built my first deck and played a game with it and made a review. So I thought I would kind of compare the findings of this guy who just discovered this brand new game, and then you and I could kind of look at if we agree with my assessment from then and maybe where the game has changed.
Yeah, how many games do you think each of us have played total, like in total, like each.
I mean, I
Hu-
used to have a
I mean,
spreadsheet
hundreds.
where I tracked all my games on TTS so I could see what decks were working and what my win rate was. This was back
Nerd
before
alert.
I had like set playtest partners. I just played random people on the internet, and crazy, man. I won like 24 straight games. So
Whoa.
my win rate was over 90%. It was so high, in fact, that people on my videos started claiming that I must be a liar to be able to get win rates that high. I'll say now my win rates are not that high anymore. The game has first of all evolved to where it's almost impossible to do that, and secondly, I have a stronger pool of test partners. But that spreadsheet I stopped at like 150 games, and that was only a couple of weeks.
Wow.
It just
Yeah,
got
I mean,
tiring.
it's just such a disparity to go from this young whippersnapper who's only played 4 games and his his peachy outlook on life that's
Yep.
about to get shattered by 2 grizzled old men who have played far too much Destiny
Yeah,
in the last
exactly.
year.
Definitely. It's a totally different vantage point, right? And I was also still looking at it from the vantage point of, I bet my daughter and I can really enjoy this game together, and this is exciting. And that did not come to fruition. As soon as the game got serious at all, she was like, "Yeah, I am out.
Yeah, I don't blame her.
I can't just roll Vader and kill you. You removed my dice? Are you insane? You don't touch my dice."
Yeah, that's disheartening
Yeah.
to get your dice mitigated and then yeah, I mean the
Yep.
game has just evolved in such a negative. I mean not negative but like competitive way.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's go over the list. First thing
Let's do it.
is, my very favorite part of the game was just the structure of the game of I take an action and you take an action. I said that I thought that kept you constantly engaged. You could never kind of tune out because the whole game state changes in like 2 seconds and you're on the clock again. I really like that. And I just like the fact that your plans had to be flexible because you were only going to get that one action. And then, first of all, your opponent could take any number of actions, or kind of like the chess player in me, I liked planning for multiple avenues, right? Like if I do this and then they do that, or that, or that, and I have to make a plan that sort of works with all of them. What do you think about that?
No comment. I feel like the game has turned into I hope when it's finally my turn, some of my characters are alive.
Yeah,
And that's extreme, but sometimes it does feel like that, especially, with the addition of Sabine on top of FN and Poe and Ray and Cad Bane now. There's just so many ways for damage to be resolved before mitigation.
yeah,
And, it was cool when we could do a little bit of that. Like back in the beginning when it was just Han Ray, right? And it was
Yep.
like, okay, so you played Han Ray if you wanted to do that. And it wasn't necessarily the strongest because neither characters like Dice was amazing. But of course, it could do amazing things when it worked. And it was not wholly consistent, but it was good. And now, now most competitive decks do that and do it better than Han Ray ever did.
Yeah, I agree. I think Spirit of Rebellion really changed the game in that way, and that's one place where I feel like the game, I think, is worse off. I don't know. I mean, I think maybe some people like it better. It feels like, and maybe I'm wrong, Empire at War feels a little less action cheaty.
Ooh,
I don't, and maybe I'm
really?
just totally wrong in that, and it's the people I've been playing against. Like Thrawn Unkar doesn't do a lot of action cheating. It just is really good. And that's kind of exciting. And like the Hera Maserati decks don't do tons of cheating outside of I guess outside of hit and run and Maz and partnership.
Yeah, that one does a little bit. I would say like partnership and the support decks really add something there. And there's a bunch of different support decks. Have you not played against Sabine Ezra yet?
I have not played against Sabine Ezra, and it
Okay.
doesn't seem like it'd be that great to me.
Really?
Yeah, it seems
Interesting.
like a
I'm gonna do what
slightly-
I'm gonna do what you do to me when I tell you something that you think is insane.
Yeah.
You go, interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah, I clearly need to play against that deck because it just looks to me like it's Han Ray, only this Han is better but dies easier, and the Ezra left over is still garbage. So I don't quite understand what's so scary. Are you talking about the ability to lock them out, or are you just talking about the straight damage?
I'm just talking about all of it. If we're going to talk about best decks, we should just save the talk for then.
Gotcha. Let's do that. Yeah, that's the one proposed top deck that I haven't even played with or against yet. That's a big gap in my knowledge base at the moment. An embarrassing one that I allow myself at the beginning of sets because I screw around. I'm finally now getting to the point where it's like, okay, we're going to get serious, and we'll get serious in a little bit.
Yeah, well, you can't tackle it all. But let me just say, for in action cheating, Sabine and CAD, and Sabine especially because she has graveyard manipulation, for both of them to play an ambush weapon on them as they roll and resolve that damage and do things like chain it, like Sabine can chain it with running interference. So not even like a necessary lockout, but just preventing the mitigation in any way is very strong.
Even if you just have the one, so they can't then play a card to mitigate.
Right. So you all right. I guess we're getting
No. Let's stop here. I totally get you. We will cover that deck more in a bit.
Okay.
All right. Let's go on to the second one then. I felt like there were going to be lots of legitimate archetypes. I was seeing mill, control, aggro, mid-range. It felt like you could run the whole gamut, and in fact, a lot of my early decks were control decks. I played a lot of Dooku Jabba and ran out of time in cuts before I realized that that wasn't a reality. Where do you think we are right now with that? Do we have a lot of archetypes or not?
Yeah, I think we're getting back to that. And then, of course, if they're going to do something to sort of like hurt FN, that's going to be even more prevalent. But in a way, Awakenings was the dream. There were so many decks. And like, yeah, you ran out of time a bit with Jabaduku, but not everyone did. I had some success with that deck as well. I mean, in Awakenings, I took Finn Akbar to a Winnabox and felt very confident that I would, make the cut. And I missed out by like that's how I felt about Awakenings. You could take anything. You could just take anything.
Yeah,
and in all of Awakenings, I never lost to Vader Raider, which was like supposed to be, the greatest deck of all time.
Yeah, I feel like Spirit of Rebellion kind of threw that out the window, and it was like, which aggro deck is better? That felt like Spirit of Rebellion.
Yeah, and there was a little bit with the like Funkar decks that did a little bit, but that was even just combo control. There just weren't that many amazing options in Spirit of Rebellion. And, of course, like the hype of Pomas and Rainbow Nines at the very end of it was just bad for the meta and for the game and for people to, like, want to play different things.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried that it will happen again with Empire at War because, like you said, we do have really good aggro characters in Cad Bane and Sabine if they don't touch up Nines. But if they do, I still hold out hope that Thrawn car can still be good, that these vehicle decks can still be good, and we'll have a more diverse meta, at least in Spirit of Rebellion.
Yeah, I think it'll happen. It's really tough to say without a rules regulation update. This is obviously the longest they've ever gone. The set's been out for 2 weeks, and we haven't heard, like, word one about any rules adjustments or anything. So it's really tough to say if this is how it's going to be. But right now, it's just like the Wild West. You just play whatever you want right now. Yeah. But things are good, and there's a bunch of, and honestly, the printing of Captain Phasma, the 2-player set, just opened up villain deck building like it needed any more opening up. But you can actually play non-yellow villain now because she's so strong that you don't have to play he doesn't like you. Like you can literally not play yellow for a change.
Yeah, and that was crazy.
Rarely the case.
They're like, all right, I think heroes are fine. What we really need to open up is the options for villain.
Man, it's so ridiculous.
We will not talk about that. Another thing that I saw that I feel like is different now is a great flexibility in your rolls. Like you would roll, and unless you were really short-sighted and made like a really heavy damage-based deck, you could basically take whatever you roll. If you roll resources, cool. You're getting ready to get more damage with upgrades. If you roll disrupt, fine, then your opponent can't do as much, and you could always make these plays that were 3 to 4 turns ahead, sometimes even a round or two ahead, based on whatever you had at your disposal. What do you think? That feels like that's changed a fair amount to me.
Yeah, I guess for me, I never really felt like that, but even from the beginning, I played more aggressive decks. I did play a little Jabaduku, which opened it up, but at that point I was like only wanted to resolve discard sides. Like I very rarely wanted to resolve anything else. But when I started playing, I played a lot of Hanrei and Jabba, Dooku Grievous. And with those, I was like, I was the one guy at the tournaments, like at least the small ones at the very start. I was just like re-rolling for damage, re-rolling for damage, re-rolling for damage. But I get what your point is. Like when you're just playing casually, you're learning the game. Everything felt good. It felt good to take a shield. It felt good to disrupt their resource. It was all good. But when you really get into the competitive aspect of it, like there's not a lot of good reasons to disrupt. Like, are you cleaning them out? Is it a deck that can't regenerate that fast? So there's once you get into the competitive, I think you leave that more behind, more so than like the evolution of the game through like card development.
Yeah, I think both are true. I think part of it was the artificial state of the game early on where we didn't have all the cards. And so
Hmm.
you didn't have quite that power spike, kind of like with the starter decks. You're not just going to reroll damage and blow someone out usually. You're going to have to use all the sides effectively because there's not as much damage to be had. And I think that was a change that came about from all the cards being released, people finding, Django Veers and it being like, oh, you can just re-roll for damage 5 times and win that way. Okay, cool. And then that kind of, people figure that out and realize that that's a really strong archetype.
Yeah, I did get into the game later than you, and probably most of the people who started when at the inception. So that's probably one of the reasons we have a different point of view there.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's something like you said, quickly became that kind of game. One of the things that I loved back then that I still love is the fact that you start with a game plan. Like you get your characters and that they're the main assets you have. You have their abilities. You have a battlefield that you've chosen to use that you may get a chance to use. And then you have this really generous mulligan system, so you really get to shape how your game is going to be played, which reminds me a lot of something like the Star Wars CCG, where you could really shape that as contrasted to something like Game of Thrones, where you have this enormous deck and you just whoop, 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 pull some cards off the top and go, all my good cards are on the bottom of the deck. Well, it looks like I lose this game.
Yeah, yeah. The one thing that SWCCG was missing was the mulligan, but the fact that you could draw cards without any real penalty, certainly made up for that. I do love the way the game starts, the destiny. You get your 5. You can make your strategy based on the 5 you draw, or you can have a very specific mulligan. And there have been a bunch of decks that I've played where I say, okay, if I have these cards, I'll mulligan these. But if I have this other set of cards, I'm going to mulligan different kinds of cards. So like you can really have strategies for whatever you draw in that opening 5 to mulligan most effectively. So I really, really do like that. And then if you do have a very specific mulligan, like you're looking for, 1 to 4 cards or 2 to 4 cards in your hand, and you ship like 4 or all 5, like you have a decent chance of drawing what you need, which is great.
Yeah. It was especially important early for something like holocrons, right? You could actually build a deck that had a bunch of expensive force powers and assume you would hit your holocron somewhat early. Whereas, in a game with a 60 card deck, you could not build your whole deck around maybe drawing a copy of this card that makes everything else function. Like, that's just so risky without having a lot of tutoring.
Yeah, and for a lot of people who played Holocron at the beginning, it was like, ooh, do I keep my Force Thrower or my Mind Probe and ship the other 4 and try and get the Holocron? Like,
Yeah.
that was such a fun, standard mulligan.
Yep. I also thought at the beginning that, wow, this really feels like I'm playing Star Wars, right? Like a lot of these characters and decisions I'm making feel like Star Wars. It feels like I've got my team of dudes against their team of dudes. Vader has his fist up, slowly choking the life out of me every turn, while simultaneously using his brute force to slaughter me. It just felt like Star Wars right from the start. Do you still feel like that with this game?
I do think that they've really connected on the flavor, especially of Empire at War. I really like what they did with a bunch of the characters. I don't know. I hate saying something like this, but like I don't think like I don't like enter that fantasy world where I'm trying to have fun. I really just think about it competitively. I'm like glad you had fun, like pretending to be Darth Vader or whatever. But I'm especially as like the thing is I am a huge fan, and I really get into the minutia of, the universe. Like learning the admirals' first names, like Firmus Piet and whatnot.
Hmm.
So I really like I do love when the flavor connects, and I think like Thrawn was a great flavor connect. Um, yeah, I really think that they've done a good job. Even though I wasn't too impressed with the first two sets, I think Empire at War like has really, really driven home the flavor.
Yeah, I think there were a lot of cards that were really good flavor wise. I do think nines is a hilarious miss, where you're just like,
Well, yeah.
this unknown dude is the best character in the game. He has this ability that doesn't match it. I guess it does kind of match him, right? Didn't he have a gun and then he pulled out like another weapon and went to town with it?
Yeah, he was a trained. So if you read
There you go.
the Before the Awakenings Young Jedi novel or whatever, the like the young adult novel, Young Jedi, he was a character and he was Finn's best friend, and they trained together with
Oh,
the
I didn't
Riot
know that.
Batons. Yeah, there's a whole book Before the Awakening.
Hmm.
There's a whole young adult book series. Anyway, let me ask you this: if FN was properly cast, which Star Wars character would he be? You know what I mean? Like, would he be Boba Fett?
Yeah, I think he would be. Boba Fett seems like a good fit, a guy who has like an arsenal of weapons um, at his disposal that he's very effective with and is able to do great things with.
Yeah, I think he probably should have just been Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Like, you play a weapon on him, it's like one of the things on his keypad for his Mandalorian armor, and boom,
Yep.
it's a missile, it's a flamethrower, it's a whatever.
Yeah, he would have been a great fit for that. Yeah, it's too bad that
Instead, he's a random stormtrooper who died in 10
he's
seconds.
not. He's Finn's best friend. You just said
Well,
that.
yeah, but I mean, no one read those books
Yeah,
except
that's the
me.
problem, right? So the last thing on my list was that I thought the game was really fun, and in fact, I said in the video that I was actually only 2 and 3, and the way I am is when I lose at things, they're not that fun, right? It's not me, it's you. You're not that fun.
So you like the adventure of it. You liked to discover whether or not you were going to win.
It seemed like there was always something happening. It never came down to the last rolls. There was just a lot of strategy. And even when I lost, I felt like I'm having a lot of fun here. I'm rolling dice. I'm using strategy. I'm using my brain. It just seems like a lot of fun, whatever that word means.
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes right back to your first point with the back and forth. Like you really felt engaged. You felt like you were playing a game against someone, and it was just great. And yeah, I don't know. As someone who like pretty specifically just plays online to test and tries to go to big tournaments, I definitely the games where I have fun are few and far between. But I have really enjoyed like pulling out decks that I think would be fun, or like discovering new ways to play. So I think it does still capture some of that fun, especially when they're pushing the limits of deck building with Sabine, with Hera, with Thrawn. It really gives us some like very interesting options to tackle and just explore. And that exploration can still be fun, I think.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to some sort of limited environment. I found for me the most fun I have for the game is what I call inefficient destiny. Whenever there's some sort of artificial game that, like, I made a deck for me that was a Vader deck and a deck for my brother that was a Luke deck, and just made even decks with minimal action cheating, and we both had tons of fun, right? It was a lot more fun. And I feel like there's a lot of fun to be had in Destiny, and I think you and I have a similar problem where we take something that's supposed to be fun and kind of distort it and destroy it to
Strangle
try
it,
to make something more.
strangle it like it's our Padme.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, there is this weekend. I don't know which day you're going to publish this on, but this coming weekend on October 7th, there's an online sealed deck tournament, and it seems pretty interesting because it's 16 packs of Empire at War sealed.
Yeah.
It's pretty fun.
I
Like it sounds
really
fun.
want to play in it. I definitely will not be able to, but it looks like a ton of fun. So I'd love to hear reports from anyone who listens to the show who can give us a little feedback.
Yeah, same. And I think limited formats are great. Limited's the only way I still play Magic. So I find it like very accessible. It's very, and again, this goes back to the point we were just making, which is, we're tackling something new. We're creating a new avenue. We're trying to figure out how to deck build by just opening packs, and it just made like that's what is fun about playing any game. I think is just the discovery, and if you can solve it, it loses its fun. And a
Yeah.
CCG, in essence, like can never be solved, at least not for very long.
I was actually starting to make my own sealed format, and then rumors started emerging that FFG's working on one, so I kind of stopped that. But boy, I can't wait till it comes out, if it is coming out.
Yeah, that'd be sweet.
Yeah. All
I
right.
don't know how they're going to do it, but it'd be sweet. I was thinking like you could do something like the old Star Wars CCG where you had an official tournament sealed deck box and one person was light and one person was dark
Hmm.
and you just split the cards in half. And you could do that with there's 36 packs, so you
Yeah.
could like give each group of two 18 and then split up light and dark. The only thing is what
A
are you going to
big
do? Fight to
buy-in,
the death
Mike.
to play villain? Like yeah,
Yeah.
it would be a big buy-in for sure, but it's some way. It's like a way to open boxes or
Yeah.
whatever. But yeah, then hero and villain would have to be balanced for that to even work.
To be honest, did you hear about the box tournament that we played in around here?
No?
So when Empire at War came out, we had a sealed tournament. There were 16 of us. You got one box, and you could mix hero and villain, but you had to keep the color restrictions as is. And it was amazing. And I now want to open all my boxes that way, right? Like any box I open, I want to be like, all right, let's make it a sealed event, right? There's nothing on
Yeah,
the
that sounds
line,
great.
but why not actually use our box opening in a fun way? And that was amazing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people should do that and do that. And yeah, I mean, I love hearing about that stuff because it's such just a good way to enjoy the game. And again, like if everyone does that every set, like you can legitimately have fun with that. Like it could
Yeah.
be like an unrecognized format.
The only problem, Mike, is I got last. I got third, which is last.
Yeah, well,
But it was
I don't
fun.
want to. I don't want to go into your psychological
It
issues
was
today.
fun anyway,
Let's just have a
Mike.
nice, relaxing podcast.
Yeah. Let's talk about some news then, because there was some. Actually, before we wrap up, I guess I should give a quick summary. A year ago, I thought Destiny was a really fun game that had a lot of promise. A year later, I still really, really enjoy it. I've had my moments where I've gotten really frustrated as the competitive person in me has literally strangled all the fun out of this glorious game. I've taken a step back, taken some deep breaths, and I'm still at a spot now where I'm loving the game and having a lot of fun. How about you, Mike?
I mean, just to be clear, you're referring to the time where you got super salty and ran away from the game for a couple weeks. That's the time you're referring to.
Ran away. It's called taking a break, Mike.
Oh, a sabbatical.
Don't
Yeah,
recast
sabbatical.
it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, like I was looking for a new game to play. I was severely underwhelmed by the organized play support. I'm still severely underwhelmed by the organized play support. I mean, the summer was great because we had a couple things going on in Store Champ season. Oh my God, like how great was that to have tournaments all the time? I didn't go to them, but they were great. Everyone was having such a blast, and I was having a blast
Go
like
to
following them. Well, I
Uh,
I don't know. I was a busy man over the summer.
yeah,
But
that's fine.
either way, like there was a follow. We had something to follow, and people were into it, and I loved talking about it. And I loved helping my friends get ready for them. Um, but now there's just nothing, and like I guess this is a good segue
Yeah.
into the news thing. But like I've definitely heard that. I mean, we've got that little grid on the FFG website that says like regionals are supposed to occur from like November to February.
Yep.
And some of the people, so I know that a couple stores are starting to find out if they received the regional or not. And I've started to hear, and I don't know any truth to these, but it's all conjecture, but I have heard from people who are supposedly in the know that they are happening later rather than sooner, as in 2018 and not 2017, which to me sounds devastating for a number of reasons. Like when I say, Tiny, what if the regionals don't occur till 2018? Like, what's your first thought?
My first thought is, so do I just put my cards away till 2018?
Yeah, like when's the fourth set come out? Is the fourth set going to come out like at Christmas? That's a little soon. considering we haven't heard anything about it, and I feel like we've been hearing about Empire at War for literal ever.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't come out at Christmas, that seems like a missed opportunity merchandise-wise. So if the regionals happen after the set, then like there will never be. So we should preface there are nationals going on in other countries that will take into account Empire at War. So we probably shouldn't talk about the elitist Americans that we appear to be right now.
Yeah. But for us, that doesn't count, right?
But
like,
for us, that doesn't
irrelevant.
count. And there are a lot of people who play in America who may not get to play a competitive event with Empire at War, and I mean like above casual level.
Right.
And that would be a bummer.
That's a big problem. It also leaves a huge time gap, and this has been one of the FFG problems in the past, is to have these huge, what we've called dark ages, whether it be that there's no competitive events or whether it's a lack of product for a huge time gap. These big dark ages tend to really diminish enthusiasm in the game, and that's kind of terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, think about again, I know a lot of people are playing this game for fun, and that's awesome. But for a bunch of us who bought Empire at War thinking like we needed to do this to keep up with the format, if the new set comes out and like, is the fourth set that's supposed to potentially be rotation? Like, did all the Empire at War cards we just bought have no relevance? The thing is, we're just in the dark, and we just don't know. And I'd be really, really bummed, and I think a lot of people would too if they didn't get to use their Empire at War cards at big tournaments. And I think it's awesome for all the people who are in, other countries who have their nationals coming up and have this like unsolved meta, especially since going in, like, if your nationals is in 2 weeks. Like, how exciting is that to try and figure out what people are going to play and learn how to, like, beat Thronkar and beat Sabine and beat Cad Bane. It's just so cool.
Yeah, that's fun and terrifying.
Yeah, fun and terrifying, which is the best kind of terrifying.
Yeah, that would be a lot
of all
fun.
the terrifyings, the fun plus terrifying definitely wins.
Yeah, my theory all along, I just have a random date. I thought set 4 was going to be, like, mid-January. I'll just say January 15th, a random date in January. That just felt like when set 4 was coming out.
Yeah, middle of January makes sense. I mean, they've stuck pretty well to it came out in January, then May, then October. Like, everything's going according to plan.
Yeah. So what if regionals was like the new set comes out January 15th and regionals start like January 7th and go to the end of February. So we have this really weird thing where it's like Empire at War has been out forever for a couple regionals, and then the next regional is like, hey, this set just became legal 2 seconds ago. It's going to be real weird.
Yeah, see, I think that's great. Like, the set should come out, and then the regionals should start like 2 weeks later when it becomes legal. That sounds awesome to me. Okay. What I do not want to happen, like, when do you remember when Worlds was? When was Worlds?
Worlds is May, right?
May, okay. So, like, in May, Spirit Rebellion had like released or whatever, but it wasn't legal for Worlds.
Yeah,
that was awful,
the worst,
and a disaster. And if that happens again, like if Empire at War's been out 6 months and then regionals happen and it's the only set legal, like that's going to be pretty boring. So having the sets drop, and I know FFG doesn't like to like prioritize OP, having the sets drop and then having the major events happen like right after sounds like the best. And I think not only that, but I know in some metas, people won't even come out and play because the competition is so cutthroat amongst the best players. And that would put everyone on a pretty even playing field to have it come out and then regionals happen 2 weeks later.
Yeah. My only hesitation there is it's a CCG. And so it's like, all right, do a lot of testing and then somehow find the cards you need.
Yeah, that's true. That is for those of us who just don't like buy singles of everything they want. So I understand that.
Yeah. You want to hear a crazy admission?
I do.
Bought 3 boxes. One is still unopened because I have not been able to get out of my house to play anyway. For whatever reason, I've just been like, whatever. I'll open it later.
Yeah, that's awesome. I would not be able to do that if I had sealed product. I have a bad case of the pack cracks, but I didn't buy a single pack and I didn't buy a single box.
Oh my, that's pretty impressive.
But I can still build every deck I want to build.
Well, there you go. You probably spent less than me, and I don't have anything.
Yeah, I feel pretty strongly about not buying packs of Star Wars Destiny, but
Yep.
I don't want FFG to know that.
I think I'm getting away from that myself. All
Unless you're
right.
gonna do the sealed crack thing, because that's awesome. It's fun.
Yeah, that thing was awesome. Last bit of news, I think, is a huge, earth-shattering piece of news, and that's that Lucas Litzinger, the designer for Destiny, the head guy, is gone, and he has moved on to a career with Magic, with the Wizards of the Coast. I don't know if he's doing Magic or not. I assume
Yeah,
do they even do anything else?
Yeah, they do a bunch of stuff, but he did say he accepted a design position on Twitter. I believe he said with Magic, but it's a design position, and I know it is tough to jump right into design at Wizards.
Hmm.
Most people have to go through the playtesting and development team, but his design pedigree obviously has allowed him to go right into design, which is difficult to do. It's not unprecedented, but it's definitely difficult to do. I've known a bunch of people to go and work for WotC to develop Magic, but I've never known anyone to jump right into design.
Well, that's really cool. Good.
Yeah, it's
Good for
sweet.
him.
It's good for him, and the money's probably better. The location is, I mean, no dig at Minnesota, but Seattle, Minnesota,
Yeah.
one has snow, one doesn't. That's usually a selling point for me as someone who lives in the snow.
Yeah, and I will say this: FFG is pretty adamant that you live there. I mean, there's been a couple of positions that have interested me in the past with FFG, and it's always you will have to move to Minnesota, and I was like, yeah, that's not happening.
WotC's the same way. You have to go live in Seattle or Washington to go work for Wizards.
But that's more reasonable.
Yeah, well, the pay is probably better.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, we should probably talk about what it means for the game. Do you have any strong feelings that it means anything for the game? I think he probably, as the designer, cared about the game more than anyone else will.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I'll definitely say that's positive. But what are your thoughts?
My initial thought was kind of a freak out. Like, oh God, when he left Netrunner literally fell off a cliff and is just now, several years later, trying to recover from his departure. And will the same thing happen to Destiny? But then I immediately kind of started thinking like, well, the initial game design was awesome, but Spirit of Rebellion was a train wreck. And Jeremy, who is his second in command, has been very vocal in the community, and he seems to be somebody who's a very competitive card game player and comes at it from that respect. And that makes me think that maybe not only will it work out, but depending on who the second is, like if they flip that where like the dude who's like Lucas is the second and the lead is someone who has the competitive mindset, maybe that's better.
Do you mind if I just ask like where you see this guy Jeremy like engaged in the community and whatnot?
I've heard him do a couple interviews with Knights of Ren and some other podcasts. That's mainly where I've seen him, and then I've had my own communications with him behind the scenes.
Okay. Because I haven't at all. Not that I thought. I mean, I thought Lucas did a pretty good job. He was on a couple of the podcasts and. Did YouTube interviews and seemed to respond to emails and whatnot, so that was cool. I have the same kind of reaction that the game is cool. Lucas definitely loved it. He's gonna like take the most care of it. But since its inception, there have definitely been some issues. And I definitely don't mean to put all the blame on Lucas in any way. From everything I've heard, his support has been, lacking from like the mothership of FFG. But the rules are really complicated, and it seems like there was just no oversight. There was no one to look at his game and say, okay, like I don't know if there's a proofing team at FFG because the wording is not uniform across all the cards. Like the Star Wars CCG Players Committee does a better job of keeping the language uniform amongst all the cards, and it's just a bunch of guys in their underwear at their computers who release 6 cards a year or like every 4 months or something.
Wait, Schoenfeld does all this in his underwear? That's disturbing.
We don't name names. On this SWCCG PC, we don't name names. We only use Imrahil.
Oh, my mistake.
Yeah.
Scratch that.
So, but really, like the language on these cards is very unclear, and in some cases, like radically different Like, have you looked at the game text of Kanan?
Yes and no. I don't actually read the cards. I just kind of absorb them.
That's true. You do not read the cards.
Yeah.
Before you take an action, you may resolve one of this die. Like, have you ever heard it worded like that? Have you ever read it like that?
Yeah, it's
One
pretty
of
weird.
this die. It's just weird.
Yeah.
And it's not the only time. There's just similar cards worded different ways. I just think that there's no like I don't think there's any proofing in place. I think they've made the rules extremely complicated right now. Like things like coercion and running interference are causing so many questions. I see the same questions asked over and over and over on Facebook, on Discord. Can you play an event for no effect? Can you play an event if you can't spot the character? All of these things people need to know the right way. And because the rules are so convoluted and nothing gets clarified other than like random emails, which, I mean, how can you even necessarily put your faith in that?
Yeah.
The rules are just not handled very, very well. And since we're all trying to play this game, in tournaments or in kit, or even in the casual sense, we just want to play it right because there's nothing less fun than trying to play a game when no one knows the rules, unless like that's your MO to just like play whatever, like Munchkin. Like there are no rules. Whatever sounds right is right. But in this game where we're trying to go to tournaments and win prizes, like we need a little bit more structure than what we're given. And not blaming Lucas and like not necessarily saying his departure will fix that, but I'm definitely open to the idea of new management if that new management is willing to take this and like fix it.
Sure. I'm not sure that stuff is going to get fixed, to be honest. I feel like that is, I don't know. I don't know if I want to say outside the scope, but we also have to remember it's such a huge job for such a tiny team at FFG. Like the way they generally do it is they'll be like a primary designer for a game and a secondary designer for the game. And that's the team for the game. And you're like, what? Magic has like 5,000 designers. How the hell can you do two? And then what makes it worse is they'll be like, hey, Lucas, you're awesome. I'm designing this new game. Can you, give me quite a bit of help on this? Yeah, sure. Why not? I mean, it just feels like FFG losing Lucas is a huge hit because he has a hand in so many different games. That's where it really scares me. That they're already so thin, and that just feels like it makes them so much thinner at the top of their really competent game designers.
Well, you're certainly far more privy to like the goings on of FFG. You've been playing FFG games for a long time, whereas I haven't even been playing them, 10 months. So, you definitely have a better idea of the inner workings. I don't know what to say about that. If FFG can afford a Star Wars license, like they have to be making a lot of money.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, it's definitely cost analysis, right? They must not think spending more money on the game will help increase the sales, and that just means that we're the suckers who just continue to buy the game even though it's suboptimal.
Yeah.
Because we love Star Wars and we like think the game is pretty good and has some fun elements.
Bring on a couple more designers, and especially for Destiny, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I think like their games need proofing, but yeah, designers, development would help. Just like hire more people, but easier said than done.
Agreed. Before we move on to our next topic, I want to thank real quick everyone who's supporting me on Patreon. Your support is so incredibly generous. We had a couple new people this month. Daniel went ahead and joined the team. And we have also, I'd like to thank the Jedi Council members. Jason is new to the team, and then Terrence, Cody, Steve, and Eric, and everyone else who supports the show. Thanks so much. You can go to the Discord channel where we have constant chatter over there. And again, thanks so much for everything you do. It's amazing. So Mike, one last thing I want to talk about before we go is everything is sort of coming into focus more. I still haven't completely dialed into tiering out decks yet because, to be honest, I'm just waiting for this errata to drop. Every day seems like it must be today, right? Like, don't you wake up every day, Mike, and go, today's the day, right?
I used to, but I'm now so jaded that I don't even. I used to Google FFG news probably like three times a day, and now I just don't. I just don't bother because I don't think it's coming.
It's getting kind of crazy, to be honest. It's like It's been a while now, guys. Like, I think you shouldn't have known FN was good like the day Gen Con ended. And then certainly the next weekend with Nova, it was very obvious that FN was busted.
I made it
Why?
very clear to Lucas how busted FN was at Gen Con.
Yeah.
Very, very clear.
I
But
think he
it's not
knows
even
that, right?
that.
Like,
It's not. It's just like they haven't even announced the set dropping on the website. You know what I mean? There's not even like, here's our new product, go buy it. That
wow.
hasn't even occurred.
That's
There's
weird.
been radio silence for 2 weeks.
Oh, you mean our new, like, the new Empire at War product or what's going to come afterwards?
The Empire at War product.
Oh, okay.
There's been no like rules and regulation update, which would generally happen with a new set. There's been like not a single word. There's been 8,000 Arkham Horror articles, and like I want to count them because it's so skewed. But like
Oh, that's funny.
8,000 Arkham Horror articles and 0 Destiny articles.
You know what? There's one more piece of news that I really want to discuss. I forgot about. Did you see the potential spoiled name of the Force set was shown?
I did.
What
I
was it
thought
again? I forgot.
Legacies.
Just legacies or like legacies of something?
No, just Star Wars
Just
Destiny
Legacies.
Legacies.
Interesting. So there's been conjecture about that. Does the word legacies mean that it's like a legacy set? That it's like, okay, we're sort of rebooting with a new core, Awakening stuff is going to be in it, Spirit of Rebellion stuff. What do you think it's going to look like?
So I think what it's going to do is, and it all has to do with like whether or not like how hard the rotation is going to be. I think Legacies is going to include some cards from Awakenings and new versions of the legacy characters from Star Wars, like a new Luke that doesn't suck, a new Leia that's playable. You know what I mean? Like a Han with a little more health.
Mike,
No.
people have been
No.
berating me for almost a year now that Luke is awesome. I agree.
That Luke
He sucks.
is not good. Sorry. I know you love Luke. I don't know why. I don't know, like, you could look at two characters, Han Solo and Luke Skywalker from the original movie and be like, I'm a Luke guy. But you know, to each their own.
Dude,
yeah,
for me,
that's just what my thinking is.
when Luke did that backflip in Episode 6, and R2 shoots in the saber and he lands and he turns into a bad mother, that is when I was like, dang, I like Luke. He's pretty cool.
Yeah, and Han, like they did that on purpose. Like Han's all impotent and blind, and like falling into a Sarlacc, and yeah, they definitely roll reversed. I mean, Jedi Luke definitely of all the Lukes,
He's
the
kind of
best
awesome.
Luke.
He's less whiny.
Yeah, like stop getting scratched in the face by a wampa, bro. Just ball out.
So regarding what you said about the legacy stuff, I definitely agree that I think the point of the name is they'll have, you know, cool versions of different characters. I think they have a real opportunity there. I don't know about reprints. FFG doesn't have that history, though they haven't had a CCG in a long time. I feel like rotation is far away with just how FFG is. Like, I can definitely see conversations in their boardroom going like this. Half of our audience is casual players, more than half, like 3/4. If we rotate, we may lose most of them, right? Like, let's wait until people are practically ready to break down the doors until we rotate. Let's hold that off as long as possible. And if they do take that mentality that they've had in all their other games into this game, I feel like they won't have reprints, because what would be the point at doing it so early? But it is interesting. I really wish we knew their philosophy for this game. That's the one thing I wish more than anything else.
They did just reprint cards in the 2-player starter deck.
That's a damn good point, isn't it?
I mean, they did. They reprinted cards.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're going to reprint all the rares and myth and legendaries, but like, let's say they reprinted the important stuff. Like they reprinted Holdout Blaster and they reprinted a lot of the uncommons that are like still randomly, you know, not super easy to find unless you want to crack more packs of Awakenings. And then, and you know, you maybe you take like you don't have to change First Order Stormtrooper. That's pretty good. But then you start giving us cheaper, more competitive versions of hero characters, and then maybe reprint some villain characters, but then give us legacy characters like Boba Fett, you know, like a different Jabba. You know, just there's a bunch of Garandan, other dark side characters. I don't know, but
That's who everyone is clamoring for, Mike. It's like you
well,
tapped right into the pulse of our audience.
number one card we want Boba Fett. Number two card Garandan. But you know what I mean?
Definitely.
Like obviously heroes need a revamp. Villains don't necessarily, but they can still give us other versions of characters. They can
Yeah.
give us a new like Sith Lord Vader. They can give us a different Palpatine that maybe he's a little more weak and he goes in decks with more characters to sort of like they make a Simalu and a Janus Grajatis and you can do that. You can do the whole Senate thing. I don't know,
I
but
would,
I think that that's what they're opening themselves up to do, to
sure.
give us Boba Fett finally, and to give us like a good Luke, a good Leia,
That'd be cool.
yeah, and mix things up a little bit.
I would love to see like 4
Wedge.
more Vaders.
Yeah, just
That's
keep
just how I
shipping-
am. Like if they
keep
gave
shipping
us
Vaders.
all 4 of the blues were all different Vaders, I'd be like, that was a good set.
Yeah, they still need Maul. There's a bunch of things. They still need Wedge.
Yeah.
Jack. There's a bunch that they need.
Yep, I agree. I don't know about the reprints. You're changing my mind a bit by pointing out that I'm already wrong on my assertions. So
Totally wrong.
That definitely hurts my argument greatly.
I mean, I don't think they'll reprint a ton, but I think to not reprint things soon is going to be not the case.
All right, well let's move on to a couple decks. We're about out of time then. What do you see as, we'll say, the top 3 decks in the metagame right now?
Okay, so I guess we can finally finish my thought on the Sabine
Yeah.
X thing. So I think Sabine Ezra is like what's being talked about online about this deck is that you need to play 4 dice because if you play against Thronkar with prized possession and detention centers and you only have 3 dice, you're at a severe disadvantage, which I kind of agree with. But Sabine's ability to, like if you're playing 1 run interference, get back a DL44 from your discard pile, overwrite, or just like play as your second weapon. So now she's got 4 dice on her. They remove one of their dice because DL44 is like so busted. It's amazing. You roll. Let's just say you go blank, 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 blank. Even though you could go 3, 3, 3, 3. Mm-hmm. You play Never Tell Me the Odds with running interference, and now they can't play any mitigation, and your dice say 3, 3, 3, 3. And
you had a
your
lot of
opponent
money this turn, by the way.
Well, you can overwrite and stuff. Yeah, I did have a lot of money, but I forgot I played Truce first.
Oh, okay.
And then I played another Truce, and then I did this.
Okay.
So, and then I had stolen cash from the turn before. So there's just, so yeah, I mean, generally with the Sabine thing, you're doing a lot of overwriting. Like, a pretty typical Sabine turn is to play a holdout, play an X8, overwrite, put the holdout back on her, and roll.
Sure.
So you get that 1 back, and you get the action for when you activate her, you get the weapon back on her, the ambush action, and then you have the dice there. But then but also hidden agenda, which makes Never Tell Me the Odds cost 2 less. So there's a bunch of different ways to make this happen. It's not as crazy random as you think. And if you'd rolled out Ezra first, he's got 2+2 sides, and just the fact that you can running interference that and set up, even without an upgrade, a 10 damage on turn 1. 3, 3, 2, 2. That kills a lot of people. That kills a lot of people through shields. So the deck's really, really strong. And to boot, once you get that second running interference out, like even though there's a bunch of ways out of the lock, it makes it extremely difficult to play any effective turn when you like can't resolve a die or you can't play a card. You know what I mean? If I roll my guy first, then they take the cheat action and then they resolve a die and tap running interference, so then I can't resolve my own dice. So it just really severely limits what you can do. Yeah. It's very difficult to play against.
Okay.
And, even without the combo, it's super strong.
Do you think that's one of the top 3 of even the very best deck?
I do. I think it's in the top 3.
Interesting.
I think there's that word again.
No, that was more of an interesting. I haven't played it. Not interesting. I think you're out of your mind.
Sabine is strong. Any card that gives you discard pile manipulation, where you're able to play cards out of your discard pile, is super duper strong. And that's before we even get into the fact that we have 2 characters for second chance, and you can play Mos Eisley, you can play cheat, you can play a bunch of different things to get second chance back, like we used to fear with the Han Ray decks. And it becomes very, very difficult, especially when you potentially have to get your turn skipped to do anything to that deck.
Yeah, and is that deck running graveyard? It seems like it would be to keep looping the weapons.
You could, I mean, you can. You don't need to because she gets them back on her anyway. She puts them back on her herself.
True. No,
So
that's a good point.
you can
Yeah.
do other things. You can play like Frozen Waste, so you always get to mitigate
Mm.
again, because you're action cheating so well that you can make sure that she lives by, taking
Yeah.
away one of Anakin's dice.
Sounds promising. I'm a little. Do you think it's above the best FN decks? I feel like FN is still totally busted, and everyone just stops talking about him because we all know he's busted, and what's the point? He's going to get fixed. But then at some point, we kind of feel like we have to admit that maybe he's not getting fixed.
Yeah, I mean, we might have to come to terms with that, but I think because of second chance and because like you're able to get these weapons back from your discard pile and then overwrite with second chance, then just like do it again next turn. FN can have issues with recurring second chances, especially if he doesn't draw Boundless. But FN in general has been good against second chance, but he hasn't had to deal with someone who hits as hard as Sabine. Sabine's also limited by the fact that only 33% of her dice sides are damage, but you put two of them out there, and when they roll the threes, or you have Never Tell Me the Odds, or it just can be very, very damaging.
All right, interesting. What would your number 2 deck be then? Another one of your top 3.
This is what I wanted to say. So the TTS League is going on right now, and in a bunch of the pods, there are undefeated players. So I went and talked to all the undefeated players, and I know like there's an undefeated player who won a lot of games. Actually, I wasn't gonna out this at all, but someone was outing him on Discord. I still won't, but he won a bunch of games with Mace Padawan.
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
I spoke to him, and he said he hasn't played against Thronkar.
Okay.
But he's played against legit decks. He told me all of his games, and it seemed like I'm impressed. I know I'm 5-0 in my pod, and I've only played Rainbow Nines.
You're still playing Rainbow Nines?
Yeah, and I'm still
With
undefeated with
Night
you know me. You know I'm playing Royal Guard. I love Royal Guard.
Okay.
So good.
All right.
But I think it's a mistake to play Royal Guard because of the Sabine lock situation. So I wouldn't recommend it, but I think like for funsies, I was like, let me play. Like I like the Vibros and I love Royal Guard, so I did that. There's another player who's won all his games with Rainbow Nines with the Night Sister. Two people are 5-0 with Kylo FN.
Mm-hmm.
And someone is 6-1 with an updated Pomaz, and I have the list.
Yeah, that's a deck that I feel like is way under the radar right now. I feel like Pomaz is still amazing. It just seems like there's a lot of 2-character decks right now as opposed to the 3 characters that were running rampant. And I think if we move back to a 3-character meta, I think Pomaz just jumps right back up to top 2 deck immediately.
Yeah, or we could just sub out the U-Wings for LR1K Sonic Cannons.
Yeah, true.
And handle those 2-character decks decently.
Yeah.
So in lieu of like going in depth on those decks, I still think Rainbow Nines is huge, but that's not fun to talk about. I think a better representation of the meta right now is like Kylo FN or Kylo Phasma. I think Kylo FN's better personally because I think just like as good as Phasma is, I just think you still open up the brokenness of like Boundless plus FN.
Yep.
And then my number 3, again, just like eschewing Rainbow Nines, I think Cad Phasma is like really, really popular and is really, really showing itself to be a player in the meta. So I expect to see that very prevalent. Like I think if you go to a tournament, even like a kit tournament, you should expect to have to beat one of those.
Yeah, it's funny because Cad Phasma was one of those first decks that I threw together, and it had promise, but it's really tough having so many pay sides in that deck. It felt like a deck that wanted to win really early, and really early you don't really have the money to both upgrade and use CAD. So like Truce helps with that, but I don't know, it just felt like it was a little bit short. Do you know how people are working out that, or are they just saying turn 2 is really where that I'll have all the money I need.
Yeah, I mean, that's my big issue with the deck. I'm not super impressed with it, though. Of course, I've seen it like do well. You can use like you can use a bunch of like obviously you can still use things like logistics. People are using prepare for war because the deck claims so fast because of the action cheating.
Mm.
You could use Imperial HQ, but it doesn't like really work well with Phasma. I guess it would depend on like the weapons you're playing, but it could have some effect. But in general, I dislike it because he's only 33% damage, one of which is pay. But you can't deny that his 17 cost, like Anakin, just pairs so well with a very strong Phasma that you can't deny it. But I think Prepare for War is another one that goes into, all the CAD. I think you play CAD Phasma with 2 Prepare for War, 2 Truce.
All right, help us out. What does Prepare for War say again?
Play only if this is the first action of the round. No player has taken action. Gain 1 resource. Cost 0.
Yes, that card. Okay. Yeah, that's actually interesting. But the problem is, it feels to me like turn 2 on is fine. It's turn 1, right? So you have to have won the roll and taken it or lost it and been given it. It's the same problem with Imperial HQ is that turn 1 it doesn't fix the problem. And that's been my issue, right? It's like it feels like turn 1 is shaky and turn 2 on is fine, but against other aggro decks, it feels like missing out on the max damage turn 1 is really dicey.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think Imperial HQ does work turn 1. Maybe not in this deck. I don't think Imperial HQ might even go in this deck. It's just a consideration. But the decks that HQ does go in, like Anakin FN or Kylo FN, like both of those. Wait, yeah, you could do Anakin FN, but you wouldn't, I guess, because of resources. But like, there's a lot of pay sides there for it to pay its dividend immediately. But I know what you're saying. Like, but I still think Phasma does enough work that it's not like you're just passing on turn 1.
Yeah, it's funny because Elite Phasma plus just any decent character, you have a good deck. Like, you're already at a good deck because she's that good.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I generally agree. I still think Rainbow Nines is probably just the best deck, and I haven't even touched it, and I don't feel like there's any point in touching it. But while Kylo FN is good, I just don't think it's as good as Rainbow Nines. I just don't. I think people oversell Kylo's ability a bit. I feel like you just kill Kylo first. You're getting about 2 turns of his ability. I think you have to assume it's going to be 50-50. I mean, yeah, sometimes you're hitting it every time, but I had a game against somebody who had a rainbow deck. I missed 3-4 turns in a row.
It definitely happens. I mean, there's been a bunch of times where, I have 4 cards in my hand and they're all one color and they name the wrong one and they still get it. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's one of those things that's just going to be super tilting no matter what. Yeah. Like when it hits, you're just going to be pissed.
Yep.
And that's that.
Yep. And it's a good deck. I think Kylo FN is a good deck. I'm not sure that that's the best FN deck. I really think Rainbow is probably better. But I still think that's a great deck. I still think Thrawn-Kar is really strong. I haven't played it against a ton of aggro. Have you found aggro to just be too much for it?
Sometimes, but if they can keep Unkar, like the hot thing to say online is if you can keep Unkar alive for turn 3, you've probably won. And that might be true. It might be a little extreme, but if it doesn't get its defensive stuff, and there's a vibro knife, things are going to go bad quick for Thrawn-Kar.
I mean, a vibro knife is handled by Confiscate. It's handled by Imperial Inspection. Like, there's that deck is so full of stuff to handle stuff.
Yeah, okay, or then the vibro axe. I mean, there's just a bunch of things that, like, if you don't get the right stuff, the thing is, there's no such thing as a bad threat, but there are such things as bad answers. So if you're playing a control deck that's all answers and you don't get the right answers for the threat that's posed to you, well, it doesn't matter what threat I have. If it's the one you can't answer, like, you're gonna have issues with it.
My worry for the deck,
I think when you have to do things.
Yeah, my worry for the deck is it's this season's fun car. The deck that seems so good at first until aggro gets really finely tuned, and then you realize answers just aren't as strong as threats.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I think with Destiny that's always been the case. But I also want to say that I think that the Thronkar vehicles deck with supports
Mm-hmm.
like can be very strong.
Yeah.
Very, very strong. My issue with support decks is when you do play against those fast decks, sometimes you can't activate all the supports before your characters die because you just have so many activations you have to get through.
Yeah, and for me, I really feel like the support deck is better served with 3-character decks. I have had a lot of success with China Ray, Unkar, Trooper, I believe it is, and that way they have a really hard choice. No, it's not Trooper, it's Phasma. It's insane. So you get China Ray, a 1-die Phasma, and then 2 dice Unkar. And it's like, who do you kill? If you kill Unkar first, and they have money, and they've gotten supports, they can use China Ray to just go ATST 3 times every turn and you lose. If you kill China Ray, then they get $1 million and get 2 ATSTs, and it's just tons of hit points, tons of possibilities. I feel like Thronkar is not the way to do supports for what you just said, that it's just not as many hit points, and I feel like that deck is going to fold a little bit too. Like at first, I was playing that deck, and I was like, wait, why don't I just play 3 characters and do the same thing with a little few dollars? And I think that's the better way to do that.
Yeah, you might be right. I just think like Thrawn is really, really strong, and he and his 2 resource side is just absolutely busted. And he allows you with taking cards from their hand to live a little bit longer and let you hit things like what's it called? Friends in High Places pretty easily.
That's true.
Like if you go turn 1, like first play of the game, Houndstooth, and you have a Friends in High Places in your hand, you're all set, buddy. You're good.
That's true. That is a fact. And the fact that he has the $2 side and the 2 focus side means he's getting money.
And you can basically win any roll against any deck.
Yeah.
So I get what you mean, and I understand like the high HP is really, really strong, and it might be the deciding factor, but I don't think that deck spits it out like the Thronkar deck does.
Yep.
You have to find your money, and of course China Ray good at that because she has 2 resource sides herself. But if it stumbles or if in any way it takes too much damage early, I don't necessarily think that it's a better way to get supports out.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm still gonna say Thronkar Mill/Crime Lord is up there right now, especially in this 2-character meta. I've had so many games where I just Crime Lord them both, and it's just like once you get off a Crime Lord and then you prize possession one of the other dice, the game's over. Like it's just a matter of time at this point.
Yeah, it can definitely do some absurd things. I've found that not a lot of people are playing it online because A, people are just like table flipping the second you put it on the table, and B, I don't think people have that much fun playing it.
I love playing it. It's so fun. So we'll have to play some games.
Yeah, let's do it. You've also talked about how you love to crush the soul out of things you love. So
yeah.
There you go. Yeah, it's in your blood.
All right. Well, I think that's a good preliminary discussion on what the best decks are. Over the next couple weeks, I'll be apparently giving up on the 9s errata and just going back into what's the best 9s deck and trying to figure out, is that as good as a Sabine aggro deck or other aggro decks? I still think an unchecked 9s is just the best deck in the meta, but I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, like I said, I've been playing it in TTS League, and until that errata drops, I don't expect that to change. I mean, I don't see why I would take to a competitive event a deck that I know less, that's going to be less powerful than FN Bala.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that. All right, Mike. Well, thanks so much for coming on the Smugglers Den.
Yeah,
Episode
man.
43.
Good to be back.
Can't believe I've been playing the game a year, Mike.
That's crazy. Congratulations. Nice work.
It's been fun. It's been a fun year. Thanks for coming along for the ride, everybody. And when we get to the 1-year episode for the Smugglers Den, I'll do something special. We're going to have a poll to see who everyone's favorite host was over the first year, and we'll do something with that. Maybe they'll get. Maybe they will have to tattoo their face with like #1 host.
I would, if I would not tattoo my face, but I'm always down for a tattoo. I tried to get that Ahsoka tattoo at Gen Con, but it just didn't happen.
Really interesting. Okay. Well, we'll look forward to Mike's tattoo. So vote him for the #1 host, apparently.
Yeah, you'll be able to take look at pictures of all my tattoos at thehyperloops.com.
Ooh, whoa, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Well, I only have 2. It's not that racy.
All right. All right, Mike. Well, thanks so much for coming by, and we'll see you all next time on the Smugglers Den.